Before we start our library program, we'd like to share a land acknowledgement. We'd like to recognize the Indigenous people whose land we are on today. Highline College itself, and where many of us live and work, resides on ancestral native lands of the Duwamish Nation. And depending on exact cities in this region, many of us live and work on the Muckleshoot, Duwamish, and Puyallup Nations' indigenous lands. We honor the land and give gratitude to the First Nations people that are here, who continue to steward in this land since time immemorial. To learn more about native land, check out the Native Land Project, an interactive map that we'll link to in the chat. We also encourage you to learn more about Indigenous studies through our library resource guide linked in the chat. This guide includes books, ebooks, websites revolving around Native American and Indigenous studies. Please reach out to us with additional suggestions for information resources to add to this guide. If you are able, we also encourage you to consider taking action to show solidarity by donating to a cause such as Real Rent Duwamish. Further, we respectfully acknowledge the enslaved people, primarily of African descent, who provided exploited labor on which this country was built, with little to no recognition. Today, we are indebted to their labor and the labor of many Black and Brown bodies that continue to work in the shadows for our collective benefit. We encourage you to learn more about Black studies on our library resource guide. Please reach out to us with additional suggestions for information resources to add to this guide. Without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce the amazing Joshua Magallanes, faculty counselor, who will be reading Chulito by Charles Rice-Gonza. This book was published by Magnus Books, 2011. Please stay for an optional discussion after. Get comfortable, everyone, and welcome Joshua Magallanes.
Awesome. This is so fantastic and weird at the same time. Being hybrid, even though I asked for it, is still interesting. And I think as I adjust to presenting back in person and being with people, well, this is all new. And this, I mean, I think what's beautiful and wonderful about reading in books is where they can take us. And I know that may sound cliche or silly, but corny to me, but not so really. I came across this book in, I think it was 2011 or 2012. And I used to always gawk at and like completely laugh at book clubs. And when my partner and I decided to have one, because we had a new home in Mount Baker and a community of friends that we thought would really engage in a book club, it was my turn to choose. And what I shared with the group after having many cocktails and good food is we need something that is going to challenge us at an ethnic level. We need something culturally that is going to really open up some eyes and really talk about the things that I never got to talk about. And so I was researching and came across Goodreads, and this book appeared, and I started reading it and thought, you know what, this is going to be the book that's going to shock folks. I think this is going to be the book that tells a little bit about what it was like for me growing up in the community in Arizona, though not the East Coast and the Bronx, but very similar to my coming out and to my experience as a Latino gay male. And after reading this and being able to have conversation with friends, really just connected on a different spiritual and cultural level. And so today I'm going to read a couple chapters with you all, and maybe after the first chapter break and kind of ask some questions or kind of get some feedback from all of you and the viewers out there, viewers like you. And then I'll close up with, I believe, chapter 13, which really, I reread it again this morning and kind of hit me. I think I'm actually still emotional because I think it really just points out the intersections that this individual feels, and not just the internal struggle, but also his societal struggles as he navigates who he is, who he wants to be, and the challenge as to whether or not that will happen. So I'll leave it there. Awesome. So chapter 1, Chulito. Chulito awoke with a heart on as usual. He looked down his smooth brown chest past the black strands sprouting around his navel to see the head of his dick poking up at him through his bedsheet. He greeted it with a firm, gentle squeeze. Hola, papito. The old window shade in his tiny room cast a creamsicle glow from the sun rays that shot off a big metallic sign from one of the many auto glass shops that line the streets across from his building. The sounds of trucks revving and barreling along Garrison Avenue mixed with the cries of auto glass, auto glass, auto glass, from the guys who competed with each other to lure cars and broken windshields, cracked mirrors, or busted headlights into their respective shops. Chulito stood naked in front of the full-length mirror on the back of his door. That spring was just some push-ups and sit-ups, smooth, hard muscles came out of nowhere, and he looked like a Latino hip-hop version of Michelangelo's David. He crossed his arms over his chest, fingers underneath each armpit, and thumbs pointing up to the ceiling. He shifted his weight onto his right hip, tilted his head, tucked his chin into his neck, and contorted his pretty boy face into a mean gangster snarl. He then popped a CD into his system and mouthed out the words along with Big Pun. When the percussion popped into the song, he bopped his head and challenged his own image in the mirror. As Chulito slipped into the bathroom across the hall from his room, his nostrils filled with the comforting smell of freshly brewed coffee bustelo. Café Bustelo. He heard his mother Carmen talking in the kitchen with Maria from upstairs about her son Carlos, who was coming home from his first year at college. All week, he'd heard Maria's slippers make sounds like sandpaper scratching on the bare wood floor as she prepared Carlos's room, which was right above his. Chulito was excited too. Carlos used to be his boy. They were real tight from the day Carlos and Maria moved into the building. Carlos was 5, almost a year older than Chulito, and would come home from kindergarten and teach Chulito the songs he learned. Growing up, they played together all the time, snowball fights, trick-or-treating on Halloween, going to Joe's for ices, or sneaking into Coche, strip club, and laughing real hard when they got chased out by the old Irish owner. But that was before all the shit came down. It started when they went to different schools. Chulito went to Stevenson High School, the local school that everyone in Hunts Point attended. But Carlos got accepted into the Bronx High School of Science in the North Bronx, a school for the gifted and intelligent. Maria threw him a party when he got accepted and took a second job to buy him a new laptop. Then Carlos started dressing differently, like one of those white boys in the J. Crew catalogs. Chulito didn't care at first. He thought Carlos looked cool and sophisticated. They still spent time together. Carlos helped him with homework, and they rode the number 6 train to Park Chester to see movies on the weekends. They were always together. Then people in the neighborhood started calling Carlos a pato. We should kick his faggot ass to show him a lesson, said Looney Tunes, one of the fellas who hung out on the corner and lived in Chulito's building. Looney Tunes earned his name because as a kid, he ran home from school to watch cartoons. He even watched them on videotape, sang the songs and imitated the noises and sound effects. He grew out of it, but the name stuck. Chulito stared Looney Tunes down. Yo, Carlos is my boy. He from the hood, so cut that shit out. Protecting your boyfriend, Looney Tunes teased. Chulito responded with a punch that knocked Looney Tunes off his ass and required 3 stitches on the side of his mouth. So everybody left Carlos alone, including Chulito. It was just what he had to do to be correct with the fellas. Carlos tried to stay connected, but he was placed in Bato exile. No one looked at him or talked to him. Chulito hated treating Carlos as if he were invisible whenever he ran into him in the Bella Vista pizza shop or saw him walking up the block. Chulito got heated when the fellas made faggot this and faggot that, comments when Carlos passed the corner, but he kept it in check. He successfully avoided Carlos until one day, while coming out of the bodega, he collided with him. The fellas were on the corner right outside the door watching. Carlos looked surprised at first, then the corner of his mouth curled into a smile. Chulito wanted to say sorry or excuse me, but instead, watch where you're fucking walking. The fellas laughed. The hurt in Carlos's eyes haunted him for the next week. He finally went to meet Carlos at his high school, which was safely a world away from Hunts Point. He was worried that things with the fellas could get out of hand. He wanted to protect Carlos, so he told him to get correct and stop fagging out. Carlos looked down at his fitted yellow polo shirt, straight-legged jeans, and red Adidas sneakers with the white stripes and held out his slim arms. There's nothing wrong with me, Chulito. There's nothing wrong with not wearing drooping pants and Timberlands all the time. Look around. People dress all different kinds of ways. And I'm still the same Carlos. It's the neighborhood that's fucked up. Chulito checked out Carlos's friends waiting nearby with their mohawks, dreadlocks, and fuchsia-dyed hair. He looked back at Carlos. He wanted to confess he missed him. He missed the movies and the walks near the empty industrial streets of the Hunts Point food market, the laughs and the long telephone conversations where Carlos told him the storylines of the books he was reading, but instead said, I'm just trying to look out because the fellas be getting worked up. Chulito shoved his hands deeper into his pockets and looked at the ground. Thanks for looking out for me, Chulito. I know you're not like the rest of those assholes. Carlos touched his shoulder. Chulito's heart quickened. On Carlos's graduation night, Chulito was hanging out on the corner with the fellas when Looney Tunes said, oh shit, look, Carlos is holding hands with a dude. One of the auto glass guys sarcastically called out, oh, que cute, which opened a floodgate of catcalls. When Chulito saw Carlos holding hands with his date, a rush of anger swept over him. Is he messing with that dude? It was the same guy with the long blonde dreads from his visit to Carlos's school. As the pair crossed the street, the auto glass and some of the fellas on the corner blew kisses at them. Looney Tunes walked around with a limp wrist and called out Carlos's name in falsetto. That's right, Papo. One of the other fellas on the corner shouted, you better walk fast before we fuck your ass up, Carlos. Carlos looked over his shoulder at Chulito, then kissed his date on the cheek. Chulito had trouble breathing, and the neighborhood became a blur. Who the fuck does he think he is doing that shit over here, Papo asked. This ain't the village. He picked up a bottle and hurled it. Carlos and the blonde guy jumped as it shattered a few feet behind them. The auto glass guys and the fellas laughed. You see that, Chulito? You stick your neck out for him, and this is what he does. He's a fucking faggot, a dirty pato. Then Papo handed Chulito a bottle and gestured with his head to throw it. Throw it. One of the auto guys, Glass yelled. Then someone else said, throw it, Chulito. From all around Chulito, the throw-its shot like arrows. Carlos turned to see what was happening and noticed Chulito holding the bottle. They made eye contact. Throw it, Chulito, Papo urged. Chulito wished Carlos had done this when he wasn't around. Then he ran 3 steps forward and hurled the bottle into the lavender sky. As the bottle left his hands, he wanted to fly with it and stop it in midair. The bottle hit the blonde guy on the shoulder, bounced off, and crashed on the ground. The hecklers erupted into laughter, hissed, and doubled over. Bullseye! Papo winked at Chulito. The guy turned to confront the crowd. What? Looks like the faggot wants a showdown. Let's get him, fellas. Papo charged into the street. Chulito followed. He wanted to hurt that guy. He wanted to show him who's top dog. Carlos tugged his date's arm, and the two ran down to Hunts Point Avenue. Papo laughed and stopped, along with the other fellas in the middle of the street. You better run, faggots. Chulito continued to sprint after Carlos and his date as they crossed under the Buckner Expressway and dashed down the steps to the train station. The honking from the oncoming traffic under the highway made him stop. He stood on the median, gasping and coughing. His lungs burned and his body tingled. Then he pressed his eyes to keep back the tears, he thought. How could Carlos disrespect the neighborhood like that? But he felt personally betrayed. Chulito didn't talk to him again. And later that summer, Carlos left for school on Long Island. A year later, and about a month before Carlos came home from his first year at Adelphi, his mother got sick. She thought she was having a heart attack, but it turned out to be some bad pork in the mofongo she ate from the 97 Cafe. That night, they learned how popular mofongo was when 3 people in the building also got sick and ended up in the emergency room. Chulito's mother took Maria to the hospital and asked Chulito to call Carlos because they hadn't reached him. Chulito sat in his room and stared at his phone. Carlos's number was still first number on a speed dial. He pressed it, but before the phone finished dialing, he closed it. Would he just keep it business and say, your mom got sick, but she okay? What else would he say? He felt like Carlos had dissed him and owed him an apology. He pressed the number 1 again, then Carlos came on. Chulito's thoughts became a tangle of apologies and questions. Hello? Carlos repeated. Chulito? Chulito must have still been in Carlos's phone. Chulito closed his eyes and took a deep breath. My mom's asked me to call you because your mom's got sick from some food, but she okay. Chulito slipped off his loosely tied Timberland boots, laid back on his bed, and looked up at the ceiling that had the original light fixture, which looked like a lotus flower covered in 1/4 inch of thick white paint. He pretended that Carlos was right behind the light fixture in his room, resting on his bed. I saw there was a missed call from my mom and called her back, but there was no answer. Are you sure she's okay? Yeah, she didn't want you to worry because it ain't serious. They should be on their way back from the hospital. Chulito liked hearing Carlos's voice. He wanted to say so, but held back. He could still see Carlos holding that blonde guy's hand, kissing his cheek. Well, thanks for calling, Carlos sounded distant and cold. Neither spoke. Then, as if someone had hijacked Chulito's brain, he started speaking. Yo, sorry I haven't called you. His throat dried out. You've got something to say? Nah. Well, why are you going to call me? Chulito sat up. His ears got hot, and his nostrils flared. He wanted to tell Carlos that he should be apologizing too, for being that dude to Hunt's Point, holding hands in the fucking street and kissing the nigga. To say sorry and shit. Ain't that a good enough reason? No, Chulito, it's not. I appreciate you calling me about my mom, but you're acting like you didn't throw a fucking bottle at me. So if you just want to say sorry for being a stupid asshole, then say you're pitiful sorry. and go back to the corner with the fellas. Chulito jumped from his bed. Carlos, why you always gotta be stepping off and shit? What are you sorry for? Are you sorry for what went down? And how you went along with all those assholes? That shit hurt. David wanted to have your ass arrested for assault. Chulito paced in his room. Fuck that dude. I threw the bottle at him, not you. Same difference. You threw a bottle at the fags, right? I don't care about those fellas, but you, I thought you were different. You're my friend. Why did you turn on me? Me? You fucking turned. I did what I had to do. Chulito slammed his phone shut. The room clouded with his tears. He let his anger take over because it was easier than confessing that he wanted to be the one holding Carlos's hand. Not in public or anything, but he wanted to be in the dude's place. But he couldn't admit that. Their brief conversation swirled in Chulito's mind for days before he called Carlos and left a message. Yo, I'm sorry I hung up. Chulito paused. He was still conflicted between wanting to be near Carlos and needing to stay away. I just feel mad mixed up, bro. We were bloods, but you changed. And I don't understand what happened with you. I'm sorry about the bottle. I never meant to hurt you. So if you want, let's talk. Just me and you, like it used to be. Peace. Moments later, Big Pun chimed on Chulito's phone and Carlos's name in the blue letter streamed across the screen. Hey, Chulito, I got your message, Carlos said matter-of-factly. Chulito was expecting Carlos to sound happy, not distant. I felt real bad about hanging up on you, but you get me so heated sometimes. What gets you so heated? Carlos asked flatly. Chulito thought about Carlos's question. He was straight up jealous. He had never felt like that before. Instead, he intertwined his feelings with those of the neighborhood. I keep thinking about that night when you walked out holding that dude's hand. And I keep seeing you kissing him and getting pissed. How are you gonna go and do something like that out in public and shit? Chulito, I wanna be who I am. Come on, Carlos. You know how you're supposed to act around here. And you go off and do some shit like that, kissing a dude. It was on the cheek. What's the big deal? I see you guys hugging each other. And when I came home for Christmas, I saw that kamikaze guy kiss you. What? Chulito heard a hint of playfulness in Carlos's voice, but held back from playing back. Carlos, you know that's different. It's bro shit. Kamikaze kisses me on the forehead. He's just playing. What you did was straight up and down gay. Niggas are crazy. They don't go for that shit. And I knew the fellas started to make fun of you. And to make fun of you, it was going to get serious. I should have just said, cut the shit. I mean, you're from our hood. They see me as just a vato. The playfulness was gone from Carlos's voice, and he sounded like he was simply stating a fact. Don't say that. It's true. Do you see me like that, Chulito? Chulito sighed. Carlos, being gay was an understanding they both shared, but they'd never talked about up front. As long as it was in the realm of rumor, Chulito could still hang with Carlos. But Carlos fucked everything up by bringing that dude. Now that it had been confirmed, it would be impossible to keep his friendship with Carlos public. I don't want to see that part. I just want to remember the fun we used to have. But that's part of me too, Chulito. On the one hand, I'm different. And on the other hand, I'm still the same. You want to relate to the me who's still the same and the fellas to relate to me who's different. I'm relating to all of me. Is that what you're learning in college? Somewhat. Chulito sat at the kitchen table as he stretched Carlos's name, graffiti style on a napkin. I get what you're saying. How? Well, that you're the old Carlos and a new Carlos at the same time. The name on the napkin had thick letters, and the bottom of the S's wrapped around the word. Chulito chuckled. You the real gangsta. Oh yeah? It's like you don't give a fuck. You're gonna do your thing at any risk. Carlos laughed. You think I'm gangsta? I love it. Chulito liked hearing Carlos' deep, bubbly laugh. It reminded him of the first time he heard it, full out and hearty when they went to see Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, when they were kids. Their mothers had dropped them at the theater in Parkchester, given them money for popcorn and a soda, then went window shopping until the movie was over. At every stunt and joke, Carlos's laughter gushed out of him. He rocked in his seat, and his stringy hair danced around his head. Chulito laughed too, but it was more guarded. Then he started to imitate Carlos and laugh loudly along with him. It felt good. The laugh was not just in his head, but in his chest and body. There were moments where they just looked at each other and laughed. Carlos's mouth was wide open and Chulito tossed a piece of popcorn. It landed on Carlos's tongue. They played the popcorn game a bit, then bumped heads, then leaned over at the same time to sip from the soda they shared, which made them laugh even louder. Chulito smiled at the memory. I changed too, you know. He ran his hands over the ripple of muscles on his chest and abdomen. My mom treats me like I'm a kid, but I ain't a kid no more, you know. I'm turning 16 soon. Their conversations continued every day, and Chulito's heart skipped 3 beats every time he answered the phone and heard Carlos's, hey. He knew where this was going and couldn't wait to see Carlos when the semester was over. Chulito walked into the kitchen with a bath towel wrapped around his waist. Yo, mummies, I hope you left some cake for me. His mom and Maria were finishing their coffee and some leftover birthday cake from the night before. Carmen had cooked a special dinner, a pernil and arroz con grandules, and gotten him his favorite cake from Valencia Bakery. Chulito loved that sweet frosting, all cold with a thin, crispy coating from being in the fridge overnight. I'm gonna have me some of that, Chulito pulled the cake out of the refrigerator. Carmen smacked his bottom. Put some clothes on. Chulito smiled and flexed. Chill, moms. Maria's family, right? They grow fast, Maria sighed and sipped her coffee. Chulito offered cake to the women. They shook their heads. We better save a piece for Carlos because you know he digs that shit too. I'm glad you two are friends again, Maria said. Well, it's gonna be birthday celebration part 2 tonight. I don't know what we're gonna do because Carlos says it's a surprise. Chulito took the cake and a cup of fragrant coffee into his room and looked in his closet. He had shirts and jerseys by Mecca, Tommy Hilfiger, PNB, Fubu, Roca Wear, and all the hottest designers organized by color. He got dressed, strapped on his Fossil watch, and clipped on the gold net chain with his name on it. Then slipped on his religious beads, red and white for Chango, the Orisha god that his grandmother said was his protector. He tied a red bandana around his head and topped it off with a fitted Yankee cap. He pulled the cap down low on his brow. Too hard? He flipped it with the rim to the back. Too casual? He brought it back to the front, cocked it slightly to the right, and brought it down toward his right eyebrow. Bingo. His look had to be perfect because for as much as Carlos liked wearing polo shirts, khaki pants, and boat mocks, he had a feeling Carlos would like seeing him tough and thugged out. When he stepped out onto Garrison Avenue, everything was the same. The auto glass guys with their tight, glistening bodies were chasing cars and cracked windshields. A group of old men sat in front of his building playing dominoes on a card table, and further down Garrison, he could see the spray of a fire hydrant and hear the squeals of kids darting in and out of his refreshing cold street. He slipped on his favorite Yves Saint Laurent shades and the bright gold tint that were more style than function against the high summer sun. He nodded to Martha, Brenda, Debbie, who sat on the car on one end of the block, and bopped over to Bopple, Looney Tunes, Chin Chin, and Davy, who were hanging out in the front of Rivera's bodega on the other end of the block. Yo, Chulito, happy birthday, nigga. Davey clapped, shaked hands, and bumped shoulders with Chulito. You 16 now. Te estás poniendo viejo. 2 years older than Chulito, Davey had a baby face with large eyes, with long lashes, and full, rich, dark lips that licked constantly. He lived in the Virgin Mary building around the corner from Chulito on Manila Street. The building had earned its name because its residents maintained a lit water fountain with the Virgin Mary in the front. The statue itself was encased in plexiglass and surrounded by multicolored plastic flowers, yellow roses, white mums, pink carnations, orange bird of paradises, lavender lilies, and orange royal orchids that were kept spotless, dust-free, and replaced at the first hint of the color fading. Outside the case, the Virgin was surrounded by tropical plants and flowers illegally transported from El Yunque rainforest, including the golden, yellow, and white lily ginger, and the fiery orange and red lobster claw heliconias in large pots that were moved indoors during the winter. From the security bars, all of the first floor windows that were hung mess of ferns and pots, turning the front of the building into a lush, fragrant mini rainforest for the beloved Virgin Mary. Chulito slid his arm around Davey's neck and pulled him close. You heard right, sucker? My mom's had a little cake for me last night and shit, but tonight, who knows what could happen. High fives were served all around. Chin Chin, the shortest and the oldest of the group, at 4 feet, 10 inches, and 24 years old, said, well, if you want to play with tetas, you lucky. You got friends to hook you up. What, nigga? I ain't wasting my time with those tired, saggy tetas over at El Coche or the Wedge. Tonight I have special plans. Chulito pretended to wipe dust off his bare arms. Papo, considered one of the most serious guys around, chimed in. Oh, we know about the special plans? He made a sexy slurping sound with his mouth. Papo was the tall, perfectly put together kind of guy whose body was slim and solid from playing football in front of the house he lived on Manila Street. On some level, he turned everybody on. His skin was a little on the blanquito side with a sprinkle of freckles on his long nose. His brown eyes lit up and looked freaky when the sun hit them and had a way of looking at you dead on. That made you want to ask, what? The guys, except for Looney Tunes, erupted in laughter. What's so funny, yo? Looney Tunes smoothed back his unkempt hair. Let's just say there's no way we're gonna serve up saggy tetas to our boy here. Davey licked his lips, leaving a smooth shine on them. We going out, way out. Hold up, fellas, I told you, I got some special plans tonight, but tomorrow I'm down with whatever you guys want. Papo crossed his arms, making his chest swell through his tank top and scanned the neighborhood, while the rest of the guys high-fived each other. Special plans? Bro, forget that, because what we've got planned is gonna rock your fucking world. I'm down. Looney Tunes did a little dance. With what money, Davey asked. Yo, you never have money, not even to hang out on this corner. They all laughed again. Papa waved Looney Tunes away. You a lazy mofo, because I got to get you a job working maintenance with me over at Hostos, but you too lazy to get your ass up for work. Looney Tunes shrugged. I don't want to be at work at 5 o'clock in the damn morning, and I definitely don't want to be cleaning up after dumbass college kids. Papo shook his head, always got an excuse. We do what we got to do, right, fellas? He held up his hand and Chin Chin slapped it. Davey nodded in agreement. Fuck, next month after I graduate from Stevenson High, I'm gonna go full time at Duncan. But just for the summer, because you hooking me up at hostels, right, Papo? Papo held up a fist and Davey bumped it. Done deal. Looney Tunes slipped beside Chulito. Why don't you put in a word with Kamikaze and I could work with you two? They all laughed. Martha, Brenda, and Debbie approached the corner waved and stood right by them as they waited for the light to change so they could cross the street. Chulito interrupted the fellas' laughter. Forget that. Yo, listen up, fellas. I'm down and ready, Freddy, to hook up with you guys tomorrow, but not tonight. What you doing? Papa looked him in the eye in the same way as when he had handed Chulito the bottle. It's a secret, man. Besides, tomorrow's Saturday, way better night to go bug out, right? The fellas all looked at each other and considered the possibility. So what you doing tonight, Chulito? Davy asked. The traffic light changed, but Martha and her posse paused to hear the answer. The question reverberated through Chulito's head, chilling with Carlos, who's coming back from school, is what he wanted to say, a special date. The oohs rose and fell from their throats in perfect harmony. With Catalina, Davy gave his lips another lick. Catalina was the girl who worked at the Salon Ureña nail salon, even though she was Chulito's girl, including Catalina. Yeah, Chulito did a hump dance where he pumped his hips and pretended to spank whoever he was pumping. The women exchanged glances and crossed the street. What? Chin Chin asked incredulously. You could fuck that chick anytime. You going out with the fellas, hear me? Okay, hear me out, fellas, Chulito called them over in a huddle. It's someone else. Another chorus of oohs from the fellas as they separated. Papo knitted his brows. Pussy you could get anytime. We organize this shit. And tonight we're going out, way out. High fives. We're served up again. The clapping sounds of palms meeting palms like gun pops shooting down his plans with Carlos. Chulito couldn't cancel on him. Maybe I could invite Carlos to come along. Would that be so bad? It would be a disaster. Besides, he wanted to be alone with Carlos to share his thoughts. Carlos always had a way of knowing what he wanted. He knew Carlos would help him understand. Okay, here's the deal, fellas. You get the party started and I'll meet you at the spot later. They exchanged glances and nods. I guess so, just as long as it's not too late. Papa moved in close to Chulito and put his arm around his shoulder. Damn, she must be something special if you don't want to break that date. It's just that, you know, how chicks get when they make plans, especially for birthdays and holidays. They all nodded. Shit, this is gonna cause a problem, Davy said. It's not just us right here. Some of the Out of Glass guys have arranged to take off work early and they could get cleaned up to go. And many of the guys in the neighborhood were preparing as they spoke. You're right, Davy. Nah, Chulito, it ain't gonna work, Papo said. Everybody is ready to go tonight and can't be showing up all late. We gotta go together. Chulito wished he just stayed in his room and waited for Carlos. Just then, Notorious B.I.G.'s booming rap vibrated the air around them and drowned out their conversation. They all turned to see Kamikaze roll up to the corner in a special order Royal Blue Lexus LS from next year's line. The sun reflected off all the chrome accents and the tinted mirrors, windows, making the car sparkle like a giant jewel crawling along Garrison Avenue. Kamikaze rolled down the window and yelled, "What's up, bums?" Chulito thought Kamikaze would be just what he needed to escape their plans. He was Kamikaze's boy, and even though Kaz was cool with everybody, he really did the group thing with fellas. Yo, Kaz, Davey called out as he approached the car. Looking good, bro. Sweet running sweet. Adidas? Kamikaze smiled and looked down. Nah, man, it's Armani. Well, what up, D? Chulito has plans, man, Davey said. I'm going to pause there. That's a lot.